The Federal High Court in Abuja has dismissed a lawsuit seeking the removal of Chiedu Ebie as chairman of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. The case, brought by oil-producing communities from Bayelsa and Delta states, was directed at President Bola Tinubu over Ebie's appointment. Justice Joyce Abdulmalik ruled that the case was stated bad as it was filed 3 months after the appointment beyond the legally allowed time frame. The communities argued that Ebie's appointment violated NDDC's provisions, which require the chair to be from the area with the highest oil production. The suit was registered and it named President Tinubu, the Senate President, the Attorney General of the Federation, and the NDDC as defendants. What do you have to say about this?
You know, in law, we always tell people there's timeline, there's locus, and there's also jurisdiction. You might have a good case, but if it is bereft of these three, then your case is already an excise in futility, dead on arrival. So it is what it is. 3 months after the time. Where were they when he was being appointed? For them to have filed, they did not file. So some of the problems we have in Nigeria, in fact in the oil producing community, is a question of where people claim that it belongs to them directly. And that's why even this resource control, if we don't manage it properly, we might end up killing ourselves in the Niger Delta. Why I say we might end up killing ourselves in the Niger Delta is that people will now claim direct ownership of it, and it's not a good sign. So some things are even better managed in the hands of the federal government so that they could be distributed.
Are they better managed now?
Well, because for a people now to rise up that for somebody who is from Delta State to be appointed the chairman of the Niger Delta Development Commission, because he is not from an oil bearing. But the first question, is he from a Delta State? That's the next question they will ask.
But they said that's the provision, and that's the criteria.
That's the criteria. Anyway, they came too late, so they should wait for next time.
Okay, so because things were not done right in the first place, it should be allowed to thrive.
Of course, you can't put something on top of nothing.
What do you mean on top of nothing?
You might have a good case, but I told you the timeline, which has to do with the status bar, the jurisdiction, and it also has to do with the locus.
Okay, so aside what they have stated as the problem now, what they have hinged on, the fact that he's not from a particular area, let's look at the activities of the NDDC. Some people see the NDDC in a particular way, while others see it in another way. I don't want to start calling the actual way they see the NDDC. But individuals have called for the scrap of the NDDC. Some people have said they don't know why the NDDC is even there. Are they really carrying out the practice of why they were formed in the first place, especially under this current leadership?
Well, with the kind of development that has gone or has taken place in the Niger Delta since the NDDC was established.
Yes.
I think calling for the scrapping of the commission is, for me, it has no human face.
Okay.
First and foremost, before the establishment of the NDDC, what was the development in the Niger Delta and the oil-producing areas? But today, NDDC has brought life to the Niger Delta. We now have an agency of government that addresses the peculiar problems of the Niger Delta people.
But people have argued that there are lots of abandoned projects from the NDDC.
All they just need...
In fact, when you talk about abandoned projects, anyone would want to mention the NDDC.
First, all they need to do is that they need to sit down. All they need to do, like I said, sit down, carry out a need assessment of projects. Once you carry out a need assessment of project, you know where this project is going into. Do they actually need it? Is it viable? Can the commission fund it over a period of time? After answering that question, the next thing now is monitoring. Because if you don't monitor, there will always be abandonment. After monitoring, you now talk about funding. Has the federal government been able to fund the commission properly?
Has the federal government not been able to fund the commission properly?
At every point in time, they always tell you that their budget is below what they get. As in, they get below their budget. So it's part of funding which has affected the operation.
When people are seeing unfinished projects and all of that, don't you think they need to settle that problem first before asking for more money? Like when we talked about ASU, right? Some people have said, oh, the educational system is faulty, and that should be addressed first before you start asking for more funds. That's an argument some people have. But let's come back to the NDDC now.
For projects to thrive in the commission, the NDDC, they must involve the banks. Why I say they must involve the banks? Funds of the commission should be domiciled in the bank.
Okay. And the bank should pay the contractor
directly? Pay the contractors directly. So that once they pay you directly, they follow you up. You get a particular milestone, you get what you want. Then you move to the next stage. But another problem again also that has affected projects is rising cost of goods and services, inflation.
How?
You might have a project and the timeline for this project is 18 months or 24 months. The price of cement and a trip of sand are sat when the project was awarded, and the next 6 months, is it the same?
Big question. But you know, they are not, these things you just mentioned, I don't think the contractors are not aware of the market forces when, you know, putting down their costing. This is what you have a business. You have been running it for some time. You know what happens after a while. So that should not, if I have a deal with you, that should not affect my deal or our agreement when you did not put that in place. What do you think?
It should. What I say it should, because it's not my fault, neither is it your fault. It's a question or a fault of market forces. So it's a situation where...
So you pay your children's school fees for 1 year ahead of time. And then the school comes to tell you that the money you paid, you have to add to it because there have been an increase. After you have your receipt and all of that already settled.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. Because there are certain realities that you cannot deny. These are very obvious facts that you as an individual, you see it. You don't even need for someone to tell you because you're really experiencing it.
So how does that really lead to abandoning the project? What happened to coming back to the negotiation table? That's
where you talk about variation. And most of the projects, why they are abandoned in the NDDC, is because of variation. But like I said, if the banks are brought in and the government, they are also sincere on their own part, they domicile these funds. Assuming the budget of the commission for this year, it's 2 trillion or 1 trillion. That money is already domiciled in the bank. Or part of it. And you have an agreement with the bank that periodically you will be sending funds to them. There's no way the banks will not pay the contractors. And once bank pays, they will also monitor it.
So you're saying the banks will monitor better than the commission?
They monitor better than the commission.
When we talk about monitoring, you know, when I mentioned the unfinished project, you said monitoring. They have to monitor. And you mentioned some other things. And I'm wondering, who gives out a project without monitoring, even in the first place?
That's the problem we have in Nigeria. But if the banks are involved, like what the bank they do, they don't give you cash at hand if you're doing a project. They will tell you if you want to buy from so-so manufacturer or so-so dealer, send this invoice to us. They pay direct to the... And they don't give funds direct to the contractor.
Okay, so that should solve the problem according to you.
Of course, it should. Because part of the problem we have is diversion of funds and misappropriation.
You don't think one of the problems with the NDDC have been the leadership in any way?
First, it's a combination of factors, not just leadership. The government, they have also failed in their responsibility. Because if you look at it, this whole thing is an agreement. And for every other agreement, there are parties in an agreement. So if party A doesn't keep to his or part of the agreement, it will definitely affect B and C. But if everybody is sincere and they come up and everybody lives to his or her responsibility, things will move seamlessly.
So moving forward, your recommendations on the NDDC, I know you have mentioned some by passing, but let's look at it now. I would like you to give your recommendations on the NDDC moving forward.
They should bring in, first, government should bring their funds as at when due. Then they should also bring in the banks. Because these banks, they are pure business people. They have a business model. They have a way of monitoring. They have a way of also verifying claims. So once they are involved, everybody will sit up.
All right, thank you so much for your thought on